Thank you for joining me again. We are here in deepest, darkest Africa as we return to democracy through Africa. So at the end of our last turn, we see crime is on the way down. Poverty is not too bad. Education, health and GDP are still terrible. Unemployment is still very, very poor. Global economy is doing okay. We currently have a budget surplus and the polls indicate that we will be getting 0% of the revenue. So looking around at what we need to do, I notice instantly that our political capital is very low at 19 per turn. So I'm going to take a look at the cabinet. We also seem to be producing a decent amount of capital here. Doesn't seem to be anything too bad. So we'll leave them as is. Again, looking around, I can see women and ethnic minorities are very poor, environmentalists very poor, liberals really, really bad. So I think we maybe need to do something to try and bring the liberals back in, and that may be looking at military spending. Currently spending 74.8 billion per quarter on military spending, and while a modern well-equipped military can cost a fortune, this is not. Light defensive is where it's at. I still think that's too much. What I'm going to do is bring this down to somewhere around 45, about 45 billion per quarter. Now this will use all the political capital for that turn. Military spending is massive, especially in places like Africa where there's so much of an unstable environment. Military spending is very, very, very important. So this will end our turn because of that. So let's move on to the next quarter here. Crime is falling, unemployment is falling, which is good. Still getting 0% of the vote, mind you, and a stress epidemic is taking place as the businesses may be working people too hard. But let's carry on. Let's have a look now. Liberals are starting to come up, which is good. However, people like women, environmentalists, capitalists are still very, very, very low. Education in our country is very, very, very poor, and I think that is somewhere we really need to go and focus next, because the education system is beyond awful, frankly. So let's have a look. Here's state schools, and it's quite high, and it is creating education. But what about the universities? What about the next step after the schools? Let's try and focus on that next. So public services could show us public libraries. That could be good. Also, perhaps a foreign language curriculum to allow our children to learn and to perhaps broaden their horizons with things. A ban on private education to make sure that school kids are learning what we want and not influenced by strange things. Perhaps compulsory language lessons. That might be a good plan to try and push forward. I do think that we need to focus on intellect, and I do think that maybe involves the public libraries. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to look at that to the tune of around 10 billion per quarter, because it is it is very, very important. After that, or beyond that, perhaps science funding. Science funding could be a good way forward. Just having a look and seeing if we can find anything to indicate, universities and further education. Let's have a look then maybe at I know the economy is a bit grim. There are no state pensions. That perhaps explains why I have such a good economy, or a good not necessarily economy in and of itself, but a good looking balance sheet then. And let's look then, yeah, I think human rights oversight, it's not popular, but we're at the beginning of our term, so human rights oversight, it will protect the fundamental rights which citizens are entitled by funding domestic monitoring and enforcement. It's not massively expensive, but it certainly pushes us more towards democracy. And it is ultimately what we're aiming for, moving more towards democracy. I notice here that legalised prostitution is it's legal within the country. It's high. I think we need to lower that, and it's not that I'm against it. It's just that I think it could probably help to just maybe bring that down a little bit. So there's investment into transport, as noticed with our road building programme, but obviously environmentalists are still quite upset with us. So I think we need to look at perhaps doing something to bring the environmentalists back on board. And that I would suggest is perhaps through either something like a biofuel subsidies, maybe some way to reduce the amount of cars on the road. What have we got that could help with environmentalists? Keep the Country Tidy campaign. I mean, that's going to cost a mass amount of money, and it's certainly going to help environmentalists. So you see 1.57 billion to put it all the way to the max, and I think that is money well spent to try and bring the environmentalists back on side. Women are still an issue, and they're still an issue they're still an issue in that they are not equally represented within our country. And I think that it's important that we try to redress that balance. I don't know if we have the political capital to do it right now. Let's see, let's have a look. I don't think any of these are going to particularly help us. No, but let's then have a look at the Race Discrimination Act. Again, it's not massively popular with the voters, but it will certainly help reduce racial tensions. Conservatives might not like it, but I think everyone else is fairly happy with it, so I'm fairly happy with it as well. Let's move on to the next... no, in fact, we still have 11 political capital left, so let's not rush to the next turn. Let's have a look and see if there's anything else we can implement on these turns. A welfare fraud department could work, a family planning centre could work, but it's the economy that I'm interested in, and it's the economy that I want to try and work with, because obviously the GDP is so very, very low. So I think a business startup campaign that we can help fund people to start up their businesses, which I think would definitely help. So I think we can invest somewhere in the region of 1.2 billion in that. I think that's money well spent, and I also think that to go along with that, a National Business Council would work very, very well, and that would allow the needs of businesses to be taken into account, and this will grow the GDP as well. So I think somewhere in the region of 2.25 billion into that. I think that is also money very, very well spent. So that will conclude our programme for this turn, and I will see you back in the next quarter, where we will perhaps look at some more sweeping changes to try and bring equality back into balance. Thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next time.